This is the first issuance of the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing this Wednesday, October 21st. We'll be issuing this briefing Mondays and Wednesdays through most of the off-season burning period. We will start off with a look at precipitation observed over the past 7 days on the left. You can see it's been a very wet period. All of those colors in the green and higher are over a half inch of rainfall, with some of the yellows there indicating over 1.5 inches of rain. Just a few isolated dry pockets in a few spots. On the right-hand side, you can see where those amounts translate into percentage of normal. Imagery. As we look at the latest satellite and upper level map, you can see that southerly stream of moisture that was coming out of New Mexico and pushing into Colorado, still wrapping around some moisture into parts of eastern Utah. We do have drier air north and west of the low, pushing into Idaho and also drying out across most of Nevada. We'll take a look now at this afternoon's ventilation index, and for those not familiar with it, it's a combination of horizontal transport winds and vertical mixing heights. Areas in the white are areas where you have very good overall ventilation. Areas in the yellow vary from fairly good to moderate, and then once you get into the areas of red and especially into the purple, you have worse and worse overall ventilation. So you can see in the area of that low pressure that we saw, and the area mostly in white, that overall ventilation is quite good. We can also break it down and see what's influencing it for this afternoon. If we go to the transport winds and mixing heights themselves, you can see that here in northwest Nevada, the transport winds are very light. And that's impeding things, as well as their mixing heights. Mixing heights on the right-hand side are getting better in time with the yellow and oranges the closer you get to that low pressure center. Other localized pockets, even out here in parts of northeastern Utah, vertical dispersion is so-so, but you have really good horizontal dispersion out through here in the lee of the Wasatch. So it's just some of the things that we tend to look at. Now if we look at tomorrow, Thursday, October 22nd, on the left, see that low pressure area starting to, and its moisture starting to shift over to the east, but still we're under a fairly decent trough, especially eastern areas. And you can see out here on the right on the ventilation index, the better dispersion. The areas in white are mostly in Utah, getting a little bit more restrictive across Nevada. And if we break that down to its individual components, you can see on the left-hand side, winds are fairly light across Nevada. Still some fairly decent winds on the transport side, and this integrates the whole mixing height layer depth across Utah, although a bit of a dead zone wind-wise across far eastern Utah, east of the Wasatch. On the right-hand side, we look at mixing heights in the vertical, and across Utah, still pretty good, being in the vicinity of low pressure, several thousand feet, at least 3,000 feet or so above ground level. You can see across northwest Nevada, behind the low, as high pressure starts to build in, those vertical mixing heights are not quite as good. We'll take a look down to Friday, and you can see that overall we lose that low pressure area. There's another one approaching the Pacific Northwest coast and the Northern California coast. So we're kind of in a dry slot through here, and on the right hand side you see that overall ventilation, that area in red, which is fairly poor ventilation, starts expanding across Nevada and more into parts of western Utah. We can take a look at the individual components, both looking at the transport winds, which are diminishing quite a bit across most of Nevada and far western Utah, and the vertical mixing heights, fairly low to the west, still fairly good across parts of Utah and up into Idaho. So keep that in mind. Also up here in Idaho, if we look to the left, we still see some decent transport winds. That's up in the higher terrain. That darker green is basically a transport wind speed of over 18 to 22 miles per hour. Here we look at the Utah Clearing Index, used specifically for air quality purposes in Utah. And on the left today, you can see that the worst dispersion across the Salt Lake Valley and points further to the west. Across the Wasatch, areas further to the south and east in the vicinity of low pressure, fairly good. But you see the trend towards Thursday and Friday. Dispersion takes a significant decrease as we go through the next 2 or 3 days. And from the weather maps, looking at how much precipitation is expected for the next 3 days. This is precipitation for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. ending daybreak Saturday. And you can see across Utah, basically the first two shades of green, anywhere from a tenth of an inch to perhaps some localized pockets of around a quarter of an inch of precipitation is expected. Taking a look further down the road for Saturday, October 24th, you see the general weather pattern on the left with low pressure pushing into the Pacific Northwest and increasing southwest flow, so increasing transport flow developing as we go through that period. And we look at the ventilation index. On the right-hand side of the screen, areas in white indicate fairly good levels. You see it's starting to expand again across Nevada in response to the increasing winds for most of that. As we go into Sunday, see that low pressure area pushing on in to the Pacific Northwest. The tightening of these yellow height lines on the left indicates a stronger west to southwest wind speed. The punch of drier air indicates sunshine, so overall, dispersion will now be improving from west to east, so better dispersion across Nevada than Utah, where we still have some restrictive areas on the right-hand side of the screen. And then going down the road into Monday, trough low pressure pushes on through. You can see overall southwest transport flow by the wind barbs. The overall ventilation index indicating pretty good ventilation across Nevada. Good in parts of Utah. A little bit of moderate in the yellow and still some pockets of unfavorable ventilation in the red. And then taking a look down the road into Tuesday, on the left-hand side, we see high pressure starting to build on in. That'll bring increasing warmth. We'll start to bring some lowering ventilation. You can see on the left-hand side here, we're seeing more of a reddish area and yellow starting to build across Nevada, and that'll also expand into Utah as well. And if we look at precipitation during that time period, we stay fairly dry as we go into the weekend and early next week with that building high pressure. And further down the road, the week 2 or the 8 to 14 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center on the left, temperatures remaining well above normal for most areas. Precipitation, a little signal of wetter than normal across the Pacific Northwest and trailing into parts of the Great Basin. We'll have to see on that. My inclination is we'll stay fairly normal, which means at least one light to moderate rain event during that second week period. This is a new product we'll be issuing every Monday and Wednesday from here on in during the off-season burning period. We are looking for comments to improve this product, maybe add certain things. If you have any questions or comments, please submit them to me at the email address shown here. Have a great day. Our next update will be coming up this coming Monday.